at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hey, it's Michael here for our inaugural edition of Oilers Live Tuesday on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. My name is Michael, also known as Oilers Live. I've got my trusty sidekick Dash in the park and special guest Bruce McCurdy on with me tonight. Special thanks to our guys Dustin Nielsen, Matt Iwanek, Tom Gazzola, and Lieutenant Eric for this opportunity to have our part in the Edmonton sports scene. And Heavy Hockey Live at Night will be on Tuesdays with Oilers Live. That's Dash and myself, 9 p.m. Mountain. And then Wednesdays with Devin, Bruce, Tyler, and John, which is tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Mountain for the fantasy hockey hacks. Now, a couple of housekeeping items for our new listeners tonight. There's a live chat that occurs on our YouTube channel. You can interact at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Please give a subscribe while you're there. And all of this is brought to you by the Heavy Hockey Network, which can be found at www.heavyhockey.com. So tonight on the show, as I said, my sidekick Dash plus special guest for our inaugural Edmonton Sports Talk show is from the Cult of Hockey, Bruce McCurdy. Guys, let's make it count tonight. Bruce, how you doing?
Very well indeed. This is a great honor sitting in on the first one. It was in our midst today. We had a huge power failure in St. Albert last night for like 5 hours overnight, and our computer system here at home completely crashed. And my son, who is an IT for a living, and definitely my IT, was on the road in Winnipeg, and he had to fix it long distance. Kevin was a savior today. Thank you, Kevin. And here we are.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for making Bruce's appearance possible. And Dash, how you doing tonight?
Well, I couldn't be more happy to have anybody that Bruce McCurdy on for our, premiere episode. Friend, supporter. So really happy about that. Myself, buddy, I'm like Katrina in the waves. I'm walking on sunshine. Don't feel good.
Right on. And, it seems like every day this off season, I keep thinking when we get up to Tuesdays, we're not going to have anything to talk about. But go figure, it's like Ken Holland knows our schedule. He's got to announce something, or he makes a special appearance on Oilers Now with Stauffer. And so we've got lots to talk about tonight. Of course, not long before the show tonight, Ernie was signed to a PTO coming into camp. And Bruce, I know the internet was not your friend tonight, but now you know, and we'll have a talk about that among other things. So pretty excited tonight. We're going to talk about some headlines. We might have some glitches along the way. This is our first time live on EdmontonSportsTalk.com, so there's a few little extra pieces going, and just bear with us tonight. We should, and feel free, and I know you will, but feel free to let us know how the audio is and everything in the chat, and we'll just go from there. We'll work on it as we go. It's pretty exciting. I think there's a little bit of anxiousness and excitement from Dash and myself and Bruce. Well, I think you're a veteran of all of this. You've probably, let's start. What's the biggest
My first
technical
rodeo.
error you've ever had on air that you could think of?
Error?
Yeah. Has anything big happen? Like you just like maybe dead air or
Oh,
probably lots of
uh,
times.
I make sort of verbal typos, and I say
Don't we
I
all?
mean one thing, and I'm sort of following my own chain of thought, but I'm not careful enough with my words. The other day, for instance, I talked about uh, Ethan Bear playing 71 games, all the games in the shortened season, the COVID shortened season. I meant to
I
say
heard you say that.
lockout shortened season, which, I mean, it was shortened season. I mean, usually that's lockout, right? Anyway, the old brain cramps do seep through, and they do provide one with a chance for abject humility once in a while.
Good. Yeah, well, we definitely have that happen here once in a while as well. Yeah, thankfully we've got the internet to save us. We've actually got an '80s party happening soon, and I was thinking way back when. I mean, all we had was the newspaper we could we could go to for late breaking news, and if you're lucky, you go onto the radio. I'd like to talk about that because lots has changed in the Edmonton sports scene. Of course, EdmontonSportsTalk.com is new. We just followed, a great show on Edmonton Sports Talk called the Raceline Radio Network. That was this fellow Eric Tomas. If you haven't had a chance to listen to him ever, I actually had a good quick listen before the show. That was great. Number of different people. Of course, I'm loving this hangouts that they have at Edmonton Sports Talk.
Very
First
cool.
day they had JMO on, and let me tell you, it was nice to hear his voice talk about the Elks, who are on a home game winning streak. I might add. Who would have thought? So that's all pretty exciting, but lots going on. And one of the things we'll talk about, and I don't know if Bruce, in the absence of the internet, if you had the chance, but we are, as I've said many times on the show, lucky to have the people in sports media in Edmonton that we do. One of those people is Bob Stauffer. And I actually I listened to his interview with Ken Holland, and he asked a couple of tough questions, of Holland, and he could have held back, about trading assets at the deadline and a couple of other things. First off, Bruce, today did you get a chance to listen?
To Stauffer's show?
Yeah, to Stauffer and
No,
Ken
I'm
Holland.
afraid I didn't. I heard a low tide show in midday on. I don't get really great reception, but I was able to get it on my phone, so I listened to that. But I needed my phone for other things, so I carried on. So I often listen to Bob's show in the archives, and I found out now it's at 5 o'clock. Uh, I often don't get that chance until the next morning, where it used to be like, in the afternoon I could go in and pick and choose, two or three parts of the show and dispense with the ads. Sorry, Bob, and just listen to the actual content, which is, there's a lot on that show. You learn a lot by listening to that show. So this whole rearrangement of the hours and now the sports radio sort of into a couple of I think. Competitive in that they're competing with each other for airtime, but a friendly competition, I'm sure. I mean, you mentioned all the good people at Edmonton Sports Radio earlier, Dusty and Eric and Tom and so on, and handsome Tom Gazzola. So they're all good people. I know them myself and think highly of them. So that's a good group. And yet over on the other side, we've got Low Tide bringing his eternal wisdom, and Gregor kind of running the show there, and bringing he brings it day after day. I'll give Gregor all of that, and I don't agree always with him, but that's what conversation is about, man. It'd be boring if we all
Well
agreed,
said.
right?
Yeah, there's some polarizing figures in
Yes.
Edmonton sports media, but I think it just makes for some great conversation, right? Just exactly like you said. I mean, if we all, what did they say? If you all agree, it makes for bad radio. So, yeah. And talking about Stoffer, he's really brought the guests to the show lately. Dash, like, who's he had on this week? I know you're a regular listener, so maybe list
Yeah,
off.
Saravelli a couple times. McTavish had a 2-part series.
Nice.
Larocque was on there to finish their week. John Shannon, of course, is a regular.
Yeah, well, he had McDavid and Draisaitl as well, did he not? Recently.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, who? I've never heard of those guys.
I mean, he's
David
kinda had,
O'Connor,
and then he had
Bruce? Is that who he's
Jackson.
referring to?
David O'Connor.
David O'Connor,
David
right?
O'Connor,
Yeah,
that's
I've heard of him.
That's the guy. So I mean, Stoffer's been bringing it. I don't know if the guests are coming because it's a little later in the day. Maybe that helps, but he's going to attract people to that hour just based on the guests he's getting lately.
Yeah, well, that's
I think the
he's
greatest-
basically establishing a whole new market for himself in some respects. I mean, he'll bring a lot of the
Absolutely.
regular listeners along, I'm sure, but in terms of you want to hit it with a running start, and from that guest list, he has done all of that.
One of the greatest consequences of 1260 ending their airwaves was the fact that we've got, a little bit of a break before it happened, but more to listen to than we ever have. Between Sports 1440 and ourselves and Edmonton Sports Talk and everything else that's going on, there's a lot of content out there now, and the
Hockey
Edmonton Oilers
podcast.
fan base craves it and loves it.
Yeah.
So I understand.
And of course, Cult of Hockey will be back full time again, right? Once the season
We've been
starts.
doing like weekly
They've been going.
podcasts
Yeah.
throughout the summer, and of course, once we get back into regular season, we'll be doing a podcast after each and every game, like our post-game podcast has
Yeah.
become a staple for 6 or 7 years now that we've been doing every
Have you
game.
ever missed a game? I mean, you may have missed one or two, but I mean,
I
has
don't
the
think
Cult
we have
of Hockey ever
collectively.
missed a game?
And I've personally had a couple seasons where I never missed even one game,
Really?
and a couple of couple here and there, but not. It's a priority to be there if possible. And every once in a while, I'm away at some astronomy event off in the mountains or middle of nowhere, and it's a little harder to do them from there, But otherwise, I stick pretty close to home, and when I do go to the games, we do the podcast, but a little bit later. But it's a totally different viewpoint, seeing the game in 3 dimensions and in 2. And I partake in the game very differently. In fact, I kind of insist to my co-workers that I not grade those games when I'm going in person, because I won't be able to do a good job of it. I see them more as a team as opposed to breaking down all the individual this and that. And it's that third dimension really kind of brings a whole different vantage point.
Yeah, there's a number of players that I love watching in person for some of the things they do without the puck. One of those guys that I've had the chance to watch is Darlene from Buffalo. Like, he's a guy that when you watch him on the ice and you kind of you zero in on him, like you would have with that old ITV. Remember the interactive TV, and you could pick a player. That didn't last long, but you can do that when you're at the game. And if you watch Darlene, he just does some amazing things, right? And guys like Lemieux used to do a lot of things without the puck that you might not see. I mean, typically he was involved right in the play, but sometimes you don't see those things if you're watching on TV, unless if you happen to be lucky enough that the commentators circle back to it.
I really like, as an old goalie, the seats behind the net looking up the ice. You see a lot of the crap that goes on behind the play sometimes, that they're skating back and all of a sudden there's a little stick work and the refs are both looking the other way and on they go. But you see some of that stuff and you really get a very different sense of the game coming towards you and going away from you, as opposed to the side to side. That is the TV view. So it's with my little mini pack that I get every year, I try and get something in the high end zone.
So, Bruce,
Thank-
we've got two sort of trends on the chat so far. One is there's a ton of fans for you. You've been called a national treasure. Who doesn't love Bruce? People asking if you're live streaming again. And then the other trend, of course, is my mustache,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
people. So we'll see. He'll probably be more popular by the end of the night, but we'll see.
Regular David Schneider there, Michael.
Yeah, that was mentioned as well.
Yeah, well,
You know, Bruce, you said earlier that you like that, you'd see a little bit of extra stick work as they were going up the ice. And
Mhm.
what Michael reminded me of when he brought up Darlene was something that I enjoyed watching, a player live. And it wasn't this for the same reasons of Darlene, but I think honestly, one of my favorite players to watch live was Gator.
Uh-huh.
Just, watching Jason Smith with his stick in front of the net was it was something out of Vegas magical shows, like the way he could show it and disappear and all of a sudden there's a guy leaking in the corner. It was pretty magical. So I like that. And I see a little bit of that in Deharnay right now. They
Mhm.
maybe went too far with it in the playoffs, I would say, but ultimately, he's got that real nasty, that stick work. It's not just Nima Linen that's going to run through you like Cronwall. It's nasty.
Yeah, I was going to mention Adam Larson is a fun player to watch in person.
Same thing.
When Michael was commenting earlier, and I've always long considered Larson to be the Swedish Gator. And
Yeah.
I miss both of them, but Deharnay he brings some of those elements for sure. And as an old goalie again, I've got a real soft spot for greasy defensemen.
Bruce, which of those three guys is in a dark back alley do you want to run into which of those three guys in a dark back alley do you want to run into the least? Jason Smith, Adam Larson, or Deharnay?
Least?
Yeah, least. You're running the fastest in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, I might have a chance to befriend Deharnay. He seems reasonable. The other two guys, I'm not sure what might happen.
I think I'm picking Gator if I had to. I'm going to run in the opposite direction of a guy named Gator.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Well, guys, sorry, I've been working on. It sounds like my audio is not coming full through on the listen live, but everybody gets me on YouTube, I guess, tonight. So we'll see. I'm going to try to adjust that. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of production while we're talking some hockey. Let's talk for the first little bit here. Let's talk about some of the headlines of the day. I wouldn't mind starting with the Oilers rookie camp, if you guys are all right with that. And Bruce, I think you've been working on that today. Thoughts so far? What's the big storyline going into rookie camp?
For me, it's how thin the roster really is, where they have depth on the wings and really nowhere else on the entire rookie roster. They have, they got three 18-year-old goalies. We can start there. Don't set your expectations too high for Penticton, I reckon. Oil fans, watch the players. Don't worry about the outcomes of the games. It's likely not to be pretty. They have 4 teenage defensemen out of 8. And they got 11 teenagers on the team out of 25. And then they got 4 20-year-old signed Oiler NHL ELC guys who none of them have even played one game of pro, and they're sort of among the more senior guys on the team in one respect. So there's very, very little. I know that the rules of these rookie camps is such that you don't get seasoned AHL veterans playing in these games, and the other teams won't have them either. But without looking at the other rosters, I'm willing to guess that the Oilers group is apt to be the youngest and may well have more training camp invites than other teams, simply because the club has traded so many draft picks away in recent years that they haven't got the influx of draft picks into the. They had the last 2 years out of 14 picks they should have had. They actually had 7, right? And they had only two of the 7 were in the top 150, for goodness sake. Yeah. So you can't expect a whole lot of joy. They got Xavier Borgo from 2 years ago. Last year, of course, they traded away the Reed Schaefer after they drafted him with the first round pick. So he was one of the 7, and he's gone. So of the other 6, Bo Akey at number 56, he's the only guy with a double-digit number that was drafted by the Oilers who's in this camp.
Yeah.
To add to that, Bruce, I noticed when I looked at the roster, only 8 of 25 were even drafted. Right? They're all just camp invitees and guys that are, basically filling roles and skates to come and get a scrimmage going. So what is that, 32 or 40% of your, roster is drafted or less. So 32%.
No, basically 1 in 3.
I think that it gives us a really good chance, and Lotzi mentioned it in the chat, to have a really good look at those 4 or 5 guys that should really honestly dominate, should they not? When you look at, Gruby or Bourgault or Bo Akey, like you mentioned, or Matyev Petrov. I mean, if Bourgault doesn't like this camp up,
no,
there should be something wrong. Yeah.
He should be the go-to guy. For him, it's his 3rd one of these. I mean, I was looking at a file picture, I posted one the other night of him scoring a goal. I think he scored in certainly celebrating a goal in Calgary in 2021, the year he was drafted, and he played 2 preseason games that year. He played 2 more last year. Had a pretty good year, all things considered, in Bakersfield. And he's trending nicely. And of course, he plays right wing, where the organization at the top level is a little shy. And of course, he makes an entry level contract type salary. So he could be a solution if they find they got to clear out at right wing again to make cap space or something. Then he might be closer than you might expect.
Yeah, I was thinking about Bourgault is definitely a guy to look at. Now you've got him, maybe Petrov, a couple of these guys that you want to see. Who's kind of going to be the dark horse for you out of this squad? The guy that I'm thinking of a guy like Grube, right? We've talked about him on the pod a couple of times. Gruby's
Jason probably.
Jason. How about yourself, Bruce?
Well, Jaden Grube, Bob calls him Grube, so I assume Bob knows.
Oh, we're going that way.
He's a guy that intrigues me. He's number 65 draft pick, the very first pick of the 3rd round 2 years ago. And for whatever reason, the Rangers and him couldn't come to terms. And it wasn't because he was backsliding or spinning his wheels. He was making good progress. He served as Red Deer Rebels captain for 3 years. I put quite a bit of stock in that personally. He's 6'3". He's a right shot center with a really good reputation for being strong on the defensive side of the puck. And I think he was 59% on the faceoff dot last year. And it was just sort of, this is the guy that, at minimum, they've brought him in to replace Noah Philp, who very unfortunately retired after an excellent and very promising rookie pro season last year. But I think other things going on in his life have just caused him to change direction. And there's always hope that maybe a year from now he might come back. But in the meantime, there's this huge gaping hole at right shot center, not just in Bakersfield, but almost through the organization, right? They lost Bugstad in the summer, and the only in-house sort of logical replacement they had was Philp, as a big, preferably right shot, 2-way, preferably defense first center. And that describes Jaden Grube. He's 20 years old. He's not 24 like Philp was. And don't expect to see him in Oilers silks quite this year, but I see him as a very intriguing addition. I thought a very crafty trade by Ken Holland to wait out New York. He got him for a number 152 this year, for a 65 that's sort of 2 years more developed and ready to turn pro right away, which is what they badly need. So he's an intriguing player to me. I'm going to be watching him closely this weekend.
Yeah,
might have to ask Broberry how to pronounce Grube. I thought we had that right.
Let's start on that. We're retiring that.
I'm just going to say whatever Bob says is probably right.
Yeah, I'll go with that too. Yeah, I got a couple of friends that are scouts in the NHL, and both of them, when I circled back on Grube, were incredibly impressed with the player, and honestly didn't have a negative thing to say about it. The only thing that I could maybe share that was said was, that Rangers franchise is pretty Boston centric in how it's run. If you look right from the top to the bottom, from Drury to the way they keep recycling Massachusetts coaches, easy for me to say, like Laviolette and guys like that. So I think that it came down to the fact that he was a West Coast kid and was going home in the summers and, just kind of had his priorities maybe not quite 100% with the Rangers and 99% with the Rangers, which is just fine. But if you got the choice between that and another kid that went to BC, then you just might, stick with the kid that went to BC.
Yeah, well, I heard some Rangers fans say the organization has changed up at center in the time between drafting him and when it came time to sign or not sign him.
Yeah.
And so that might have had something to do. To me, that doesn't hold a lot of water in the sense that, sure, it's different from 2 years ago. Well, guess what? 2 years from now, it's going to be changed again. 2 years from now, it's just the time where you might expect this guy to be beginning to knock on the door for the big league teams. So anyway, if the Rangers made a mistake, great.
Let's hope so.
Accept other teams' mistakes as often as possible. Certainly, we've had
yeah.
a few going the other way.
Yeah, and you need, this is, a smart move by Holland, right? Like he's starting to put a couple of these things together. I think, and we'll talk about it later tonight. But Ernie, is another player that I think might be a smart PTO signing and one that kind of came out of nowhere. I think. I mean, I didn't see it coming, but in fact, I wasn't even sure how to pronounce his name until earlier today. So there you go. Of course, I was saying Grube wrong too. So. I mean, I'm wrong once in a while. at least once an episode, you can find that. We're going to take a break. This is Oilers Live from the Heavy Hockey Network. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Join Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hey, it's Michael again from Oilers Live. We've got Bruce McCurdy as our guest tonight, and my sidekick Dash on beside me here with our inaugural episode on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Again, because you didn't hear me if you're listening on Edmonton Sports Talk, it turns out I had my mic muted for about the first 10, 15 minutes of the show. Special thanks to Dustin Nielsen, Matt Awanek, Tom Gazzola, and Lieutenant Eric. I'll say it again. And also, some stranger says a break? Question mark. This is new. Yes, it is new. It'll be part of our new format. We'll take little breaks at the half-hour mark, and just gives you another chance to listen to that epic Oilers Live theme song that was equated to like an '80s video game the other day, which I thought was great. Blades of Steel or something like that.
Just
yeah.
promoting air guitar everywhere we can around
Oh,
the Edmonton area.
That's what I was gonna
Absolutely.
say.
I mean, that's one of the best investments I ever made.
Yeah.
All right, for the second part of the show tonight, we're going to talk about the PTO signing of Ernie. We can talk about some of the other PTO signings in Gagne and Sutter. Ken Holland, of course, talked about them today on Bob Stauffer's show, which was good to hear his take on that. Thoughts, Bruce? I know you just heard about it, but thoughts on Ernie signing as a PTO?
Well, Buddy's a real hockey player. There's no doubt about that. I mean, 355 NHL games he's got under his belt. He's just 28 years old now, and a former second-round pick by Tampa Bay Lightning, who seemed to have a pretty good idea of what to do in the subsequent rounds of NHL drafts, I've noticed. And he spent 3 years in Tampa, and then his old boss, Steve Eisenman, plucked him from there to go and play for Detroit, where he's been for the last 4 years. And he's sort of, 10, 12, 14 minutes a night. Always bottom six. I don't think he's been a top six player at any point. Energy guy, in the sense that he's had 4 seasons of over 140 hits. He's routinely well over 2 hits per game. So he's one of those guys that's, at the bottom of the roster, and he's in there to try and make things happen. And my first sort of impression statistically is that this is a Josh Archibald type of player, which, is sort of hits me with kind of a mixed reaction. In terms of it's nice to have some of those aspects, but when he's out there, his teams are getting outshot and outscored. And last year he was in Detroit. One second, I had it 5-on-5 here, 42% for his Corsi and Fenwick. So when your numbers are way down there, your shooting percentages have to be through the roof just to kind of break even, and it's a losing proposition in the longer term. Mind you, Detroit was not that special of a team,
No.
but I didn't get much of an impression from anywhere in his stats. 40 goals, like total in those 355 games. So what's that, 9 or 10 goals per 82, and like number of assists. So he's not there for his scoring. He's there for forechecking and thumping and making the other team pay a little bit. And he's here, I think, to flesh out the ranks for all those preseason games, 8 and 13 days, where they have to hit that mandatory minimum number of pro NHL veteran players. And a lot of teams use these PTOs for exactly that purpose. And, the odd one obviously latches on, but you got to have a few of them just to survive. Playing 8 games in 13 days. You don't want to be playing McDavid 6 or 7 times because you haven't got enough depth. And if you're playing too many rookies, well, the NHL has something to say about that. So anyway, we'll be seeing a lot of sort of mixed lineups. This is a guy I'll predict right now today. Adam Ernie, Sam Gagner, and Brandon Sutter will all be on the flight to Winnipeg for the dreaded flight to Winnipeg, game in Winnipeg, flight home to Edmonton, all in the same day, preseason. A nightmare that the veteran, proven pros avoid like the plague. The Oilers always send a real ragged lineup to Winnipeg. And
Wow, I think
often they
Winnipeg
actually
in
win that
September
game,
is
but
absolutely great, isn't it, Bruce? It's the best
Certainly, you
place.
guys mean the airport in Montana.
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. But it
Yeah,
means the
before-
fans paying for preseason games are getting, they're getting a lot of NHL veterans, but they're sure getting a lot of guys that are, on the margins. Let's put it that way.
Talk
Yeah.
about that, and Dash will get your opinion on Ernie shortly here. But for those of you listening in, you can check out at heavyhockey.com. Our guy Lotzi has done a quick little article on the Ernie PTO. Bruce will get your take as well on Lotzi's thought that Holland would have talked to Yzerman to see what kind of player he is. And we can talk about that. The other thing, just quickly, I'll say, Bruce, is on the guys paying for these preseason games. Sidney Crosby, of course, is coming to Halifax to play for his first time as a Pittsburgh Penguin against the Ottawa Senators.
Good.
Drake Batherson, of course, as well. It was sold out within seconds, and tickets are selling like for a preseason game for $1,000, which so, it's like a Halifax Stanley Cup or something. I don't know. Anyway, off to talk about Ernie. Dash, what's your thoughts on Ernie?
Got a few.
All right, well, let's hear them.
Ultimately, well, look, he shoots the wrong way. So basically, this is like kind of 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife, right? Like we've got, I don't know, we just talked about Grube potentially being a guy that could push into the lineup. Raphael Lavoie is a guy that could potentially push upwards into the lineup. We've got PTOs in Sutter, we've got PTOs in Gagne, now we've got PTOs in Ernie. Sure, I don't know. I'd say Bruce probably nailed part of it. McDavid didn't even get involved into the 8-game preseason until what was it, game 4 last time, Bruce? I think he skipped the first 3 or something like that. So sure, yes, it should these guys on a plane to Montana and from a bus up to Winnipeg, and they can go and play. And what I learned from Lotzi's article was Ernie had a little bit of an audition in 2021, I believe, on the power play with Detroit, and fared okay. So maybe can do in a pinch there like a Janmark could, but a minute 45 a game or something on the penalty kill. So we're looking at that guy that's a solidified penalty killer on most teams, and probably could be on this team too. But again, 10,000 spoons. Like Sutter's a great penalty killer, and Gagne can pinch on the penalty kill, and that's Lane Peterson's specialty, and it's Derek Ryan's specialty, and this is a great thing to have, that we've got this competition for the last spot on the team. And it's also says something that there's only one spot in the entire forward group that's up for grabs. But I think it also says something that there's a bunch of average players kind of up for it. But my final thoughts on it, and what kind of cued me when I read Lotzi's article, was when he said that, or potentially referenced that these two would have thought about it, a light bulb went off in my head. Is Ernie not the future considerations for Clean Costin, boys?
Yeah,
Hey,
Maybe.
there it is. Each one of those guys wanted too much money for their own respective teams, so we ship Clean off, and Ernie wants too much there, so he comes on a PTO here. Right?
Don't you think he'd take the minimum though at this point?
Well, he's kind of has to now, I think, right?
Point,
I think Holland mentioned it. I mean, there's 15 to 20 players that are up against the cap right now, and who's got money to pay him? That's why he's on a PTO, right?
Well, that's the corner he's backed himself into, Bruce. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, Ernie is maybe not the biggest Oilers news of the year, but he is another PTO, and whether or not he plays, I think we'll find out, and definitely he'll play preseason. And these guys, I think the competition's good. Holland talked about that on Stauffer's show today. The competition for that extra spot, that's not a bad thing. Lotzi talked about potential for PK minutes in his article. That's not a bad thing as a call up if he ends up playing in the bake. But outside of that, right, like there's a lot of bigger stories. I think one of them is coming off of the captain's skate, I believe it's Michael DeRosa from the Hockey News wrote the projected forward lines based on a captain's skate. Let me read them to you guys, and then we'll talk about what you think. First line, Kane, McDavid, and Brown. Second line, Hopkins, Draisaitl, and Hyman. Third line, Fogle, McLeod, and Holloway. And then fourth line, Janmark, Ryan, and then one of either Gagne or Kajula. Dash, maybe we'll start with you. Thoughts on line combinations, how much we read into a captain's skate, any surprises on there?
I don't think I would normally read too much into a captain's skate, except for the fact that those are pretty much our lines, and we're last year too. So, right, there's a little more to maybe put into it this time around. What I like in seeing in there is, there's a couple things ultimately. I like the diversity. I like the way that they have those lines set up, having, with Brown in that top position on the top line, and then Nuge on the second line, and then McLeod on the third line. They've got that defensive responsibility and that consciousness towards the back end of the puck kind of covered off. Each one of those lines has a playmaker. Each one of those lines has size and speed. Each one of those lines has a pretty goddamn good player on it too. Fogle with McLeod and Holloway is a bit intoxicating for me. I think that's a lot of speed and the wing's ability to bang quite a bit with McLeod in the center and being that defensive conscious. The big question mark for me, I think, is why we would see Brown on that first line and maybe for too long. Maybe he's a placeholder for Holloway. Like, God, I'd love to see something like that where he could jump up and contribute. And or maybe you bring Brown down to a line with Nuge and McLeod or Nuge and Fogle, and then you've got a line you can match against other teams' best lines in a situation. So I like the diversity in the way that you can roll four lines and come at them in waves. I like the way that you can, maybe switch it up and load two lines and have a defensive responsible line. I like the fact that you could still go 11-7 with it if you need to. So I think that there's something to be said about the way that they were put together. There's something about that for sure. But for me, and maybe Bruce can kick in on this a little bit because I heard him talk about it on his own podcast. But for me, Holloway is the catalyst in all of this. Because if he can come out and he can play like, people that have played before him, the Boldies or the Caulfields or whatever, and make that step and be able to really step into a top six role and contribute in a top six way, that's the only way he's going to be able to contribute. I'll tell you right now, the only way that Dylan Holloway is going to contribute to the power play is by filling Draisaitl's water bottle after a 2-minute shift. So if he's going to score, it's going to have to be 5-on-5. It's going to have to be. And the only way that you're going to do that consistently and be able to get that repetition and that, advancement and advancing in your skill and just getting better as a player is through those types of reps and getting to score and playing top 6 minutes. So if he's going to come out, guns a-blazing in camp like he did last year and get a bunch of points, I think he could earn a spot up there sooner than later. Otherwise, bold statement here maybe, but Holloway might have to start in the bake. And I think just play a top 6 role and play the power play and, just feel good about his role and celebrate a little bit, right? And then get called up when an injury is maybe necessary down the road. What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah, he's not guaranteed a spot. I have him written in pen in the top 20, which is 11 forwards, 7 D-men, and 2 goalies, by the way. And then the 21st spot that's wide open on the fourth line. And I'll remind you guys, I was off the internet all day, so I worked on rosters, on line combinations on Excel. And here are my line combinations. Listen closely now. Kane, McDavid, Brown, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, Hyman, Holloway, McLeod, Fogle. Maybe I got the wings switched. Janmark, Ryan, and anybody who can play either left wing, right wing, or center.
Yeah. 10,000 spoons on that wing.
Yeah, and then of course the 7 D-men, they all played in the playoffs. And honestly, it's clear we're going to go with the 21-man roster again, as happened last year, right off the hop. And it'll be 12-7-2. And depending on who might be banged up at any particular time, the coaching staff has got the permanent option of going 11-7 or 12-6, and might even do it, consecutive games, rest a D-man one night and a forward the next, depending on the competition, depending how much you want to use Draisaitl and McDavid. I remember there was a game back to back last year where they played great in LA and they beat the Kings 2-0 or 2-1. It was just a very intense game, and they went 11-7, and McDavid and Draisaitl played 23 minutes each or 24, and then the next night they
Mhm.
went to Anaheim and they went 12-6, and they just went 4 lines, and the coach clearly said, we got enough to beat Anaheim, just rolling the
Bingo.
lines, and that's what I'm going to do. And that night, McDavid and Draisaitl got 18 minutes kind of thing, and the Oilers still rolled a victory. And it was just a matter of the coach using the options at his disposal. And Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson have proven they are very comfortable working
Mhm.
with the odd man units with the 11-7 necessitates. And they've come up, Woodcroft in particular, I think, come up with some really neat strategies as to how to deploy uh, the 12th, the invisible 12th man that gets put down
Yeah.
down the roster. And he's even done it where the second line only had two players, and it was the second line that was getting the rotating centers. I mean, there's lots of different tricks that he does, and lots of highly versatile players on this team. This is the other thing, right? Um, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, they can all both play center or wing. Hyman can play either wing. Holloway can play center or wing. McLeod can play center or wing. Fogle can play either wing. Janmark, I think, can play anywhere. Ryan can play center or right wing. And so there's all kinds of options. And that during a game, when you're switching guys around, the ability of these guys say, well, we want Leon to go up with Connor. Okay, Nuge, you're going down to the second line. Oh, yeah, and you're switching from left wing to center. Carry on. And they just do it because they're so used to it. So I think in that respect, it's there's some real fluidity that Woodcroft's built in there that I find fascinating to follow within any individual game.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit, I mean, you hit the nail on the head at a couple points there, right? The fluidity of this team, the versatility of this team to be able to kind of move up and down the lineup. I've commonly said, you didn't even mention him, but I've said about McLeod. I mean, one of the things I think I love about McLeod is in a pinch he can play, where you need him. If you need him up or down the lineup, he's got the speed to do that. And I think going into this year, and he's got to prove now that he's worth the money they're spending on him. We might see an even better McLeod than we've seen in the past, and he's matured a little bit. I'm kind of curious. I mean, you got Kane and McDavid, but we saw, of course, Kane with Draisaitl a little bit last year. I didn't mind that combo. I'm curious where they'll play. I was surprised by the Connor Brown thing. I feel like that's something we'll know within the first 3 or 4 games where he's playing. Right, he's either playing third line or he's playing up with McDavid, and if he clicks right away, preseason won't tell us anything. I think like Holloway and like Perlini and all that. I mean, Connor Brown's set to score 80 points in the preseason, I think, because he'll probably get the most time with McDavid on the top line, I would suspect.
Get the Ty Ratty Award.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
He's a very fine defensive player, Connor Brown. And on the line, especially with Kane, who I think is not particularly strong defensively. And frankly, last year, I don't think Kane played particularly well with anybody. Like all of his numbers were in the soup, possession numbers or plus minus. Even his scoring numbers were okay, but they were bleeding goals against at a higher rate. And he had a tough time, and we know why. He kept getting hurt, and he had two at least very serious injuries last year. And you can only hope that at 32 now that he's over that. But getting a defensively reliable player on the other wings, you're not asking McDavid to pick up all the defensive aspect of it. I don't hate it. I'm very keen to see Brown. I know they paid for him, and they'll be paying for him, especially in 24, 25
yeah.
when he may not even be around. And when Ken Holland may not even be around either, for that matter. But Holland has certainly gone, I think, all in, and
Yeah.
that's one extreme example of borrowing from the future, where the guy's getting over 80% of his pay a year later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's it'll be curious. I mean, you might as well go all in if you know it's your last season, right? You might as well. And I mean, you mentioned it just in picks alone, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, we were all groaning, and well, maybe not all of us, but groaning about whether Ken Holland was all in or not. And I think he's kind of proven that he
Oh,
is all in. And I think the team has proven. I mean, maybe we'll switch gears a little bit for the last 10 minutes of this section here and talk about this cup or bust. Dursa wrote an article for heavyhockey.com about cup or bust. They questioned Draisaitl, which Draisaitl, by the way, has got to be the best interview in the history of hockey. He's just like Bruce. I mean, as a media guy, you gotta love this guy, right? Like he writes the story on his own.
Yeah.
Unless you're Jim Matheson, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, what's your thought? I mean, you've been around. You know you understand. You've seen these teams. You've written for heavyhockey.com about the teams of the past. Is this team done the walk by the New York Islanders dressing room now and seeing what it takes, and are they ready to take the next step?
Boy, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, Vegas did what it took to take them out last year, and they went out pretty much with a whimper, 5-2 in their own barn in Game 6. When everybody's saying the Oilers turn to win, tie the series again, and then it'll all go down to Game 7 in Vegas, and they came out guns blazing, and then it kind of got away on him, and it's really kind of left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. I know Draisaitl in particular was pissed, and personally very upset with his own performance in that game, and down the stretch in that series after he almost had his arm amputated by Petrangelo, I might add. And he was
What?
he seems like to be the emotional leader of the team, even though it so much reminds me of the Gretzky Messier dynamic, where Wayne wore the C, he was the big star, no question about it. He had all the biggest offensive numbers, but Messier was a real core guy there, the 2C, so to speak, or and he was better than 1C on almost all the other teams, right? And that's what we got right now with McDavid and Draisaitl. And Draisaitl also has Messier's gift of being able to play other positions if need be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really interesting sort of echo of the past. And Leon's own commitment to the defensive game is going to be one real huge tell. Because Leon has the capacity to be not just a good defensive player, but a great one.
Dominant.
And when he's really on his sort of full ice game, he's unbelievable. He's just all over the puck everywhere. And he's so good with a huge paddle of a stick that he wields it like a wand, and yet at the same
Like
time
he's playing pickleball out there, right?
Yeah, left and right. And he plays unconventional defense, and it gets him in trouble. But he also plays, doesn't give a crap kind of defense maybe in November and December a little bit more than you'd like to see him just start tightening up on that stuff right away from the beginning of the season and just focus on it. I personally would be happy seeing both McDavid and Draisaitl drop 20 points, but go up by plus 20. Just bring the amount of activity down a little bit, still outscore the other guys, which is really what you want to do, is outscore them. So they're doing that from a leadership position, and you'll remember Mark Messier in the '84 playoffs when the Oilers finally did win the cup. He wound up outshining even the great Gretzky and winning the Conn Smythe Trophy that year, and I see that as a distinct possibility if the Oilers succeed, that it will be Leon getting a lot of the accolades. And
Yeah. Yeah, your thoughts, Dash. I mean, we've seen it. We saw Draisaitl at the end of the Vegas series. Look in his eyes. Now we see him, with, I love the interview. He kind of backpedaled a little bit in
Oh, he
that
did.
interview, but at the
He
same
did, and I'm
time,
glad he did.
yeah, but at the same time, you look at him and you can kind of see the zeal in his eyes. The
Look, you got
look,
4 months
I
to
love
cool
I
off, and
love
you think about
Draisaitl,
what
right?
you said, right? And you're going, "Oh, geez, well, maybe I shouldn't have been so blunt with like or bust," because that
Well,
puts a lot of pressure on everybody, right? So I think that the fact that he backed off on it was just fine. I think it just made for another classic Draisaitl interview for one. But for me, it was proof that they're going to be like Blink 182 and make it all about the small things. Like it's going to have to start right now, and they're not looking past that, right? Cup or bust means you're looking at summertime. Right now, it starts at the captain's skate, right? That's mandatory. It's not optional. Show up.
the whole
That's one of the
team's
small
there.
things, right? They're
Not
starting
just
to
the whole
push that
team, but
way.
the young guys were there too,
Young
right?
guys, the PTOs, the off-season acquisitions, and all 22 guys that are still under contract who played here last year. All of them are here. That is very, very impressive to me.
I mean, if
I'm
McDavid
not
or
saying
Draisaitl calls you up and says, "Get your ass on a plane," who's
Yeah.
going to say no, right?
Connor threw the bat signal up in the sky, and
calling the boys, right? Saying, I've stayed here in Edmonton all summer. We didn't go home to Sweden. We've got a new home here in Edmonton, and I can't wait to get going. I mean, what are you going to say?
and that's absolutely, that's part of it, Bruce. I think you talk about the small things and the things that are going to matter, and Michael referenced the walk by the Islanders dressing room that Gretz and whoever and the boys had back in 1983 that give them that slap in the face that they really needed to start focusing on all those small things, and really took that summer to absorb that. So hopefully this was that Oilers summer. I really hope that that's the way it goes off, and like I said, I'm glad that he backed off on it, because it shows they're looking at the now. Let's focus on captain skate. Rookie camp can happen. We'll focus on the preseason. And I would like to see it. There's a few things here too, right? Like, that's not the only little changes they've made, right? There was different training regimens. Both Nurse and Ekholm stayed at Edmonton all summer. In fact, from what I understand, they've got houses about one block away from each other. Their kids are playing in the same playground. For Ekholm to not go back to Sweden all summer and stay committed and start to build chemistry now and start to, those guys are sitting, what we don't see is they're sitting at a playground on a bench while their kids run around screaming, talking about what they know about playing the defense position in the NHL. Like, they've been sharing since the season ended. Right. So let's hope that those little things come together, and let's hope that whole conversation that Draisaitl had is, an indicator that can happen, because, Bruce kind of said it too, right? Like, Draisaitl's got his own brand of defense sometimes. And I heard your podcast, Bruce. I'd love to see Leo and Davo both up at plus 30 instead of plus 10. Let's take that Yzerman leap, if you will, and realize that the best offense comes from a good defense. But I'd like to see those guys not have to self-load manage. Because to me, I think, if Woodcroft's going to keep deploying them at 25 minutes a night or 23 minutes a night, you get to those places in the playoffs where maybe we're worn out or what have you. Because in my opinion, like, Woodcroft can coach to win games, or he can coach to win a cup. And if you want to give Holloway and Broberg and guys like that quality ice time and quality minutes, and maybe slip Holloway into the odd power play when a game's a blowout, or when the penalty kill, like Nuge is gassed, and you can throw him out there with Dry and Holloway for the next shift after the PK. Like, try to find those little opportunities to get him involved and get him in there. And I think that's a little bit up to Woodcroft, because the way we're going to improve is by our younger players getting better. That's without cap space. That's the way we're going to improve. And those guys have to do that for us to take the next step.
And that's a good time. We're going to take another break. When we get back, we'll talk about Bruce's own article, The Boys Are Back in Town, and 8 Other Reasons for Optimism about the 23-24 Edmonton Oilers. This is Oilers Live from the Heavy Hockey Network. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk, and we'll be right back. And Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hey, it's Michael back from a break. This is new to us, so we're kind of learning as we go. We're having some fun, though, tonight. It's Oilers Live Tuesday. Will be Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Mountain on EdmontonSportsTalk.com or on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Please make sure you subscribe. A couple of housekeeping items that I forgot to mention at the second part. There is a live chat occurs on the YouTube channel, so go again to youtube.ca/heavyhockey and give us a subscribe. And all of this is brought to you by the Heavy Hockey Network, which can be found at heavyhockey.com. We're going to finish off the show. We're on for another half hour with a little discussion about based around Bruce's article for the Cult of Hockey, which is the boys are back in town. 8 other reasons for optimism about the 23-24 Edmonton Oilers. Bruce, I'm going to let you lead this one. I mean, you wrote it, so you know it best. Your thoughts on this. I mean, there's we've talked about a lot of these, the committed group, mature experience. The eight reasons there. I mean, what's the one that excites you the most?
Well, these two are kind of related. Matthias Ekholm will be here all season. And Oilers finally have a real top 4, which until the acquisition of Ekholm last year, they just underwent this long and painful transition from the departure of Clefbaum and all the cap mess that came with that, which was a real nice bonus for 3 years. And how they kept trying to trade. They traded for Kulikov, they traded for Keith, they traded for Kulak, and they gave each of those guys a shot at second pairing defense. And Keith retired. You could say that signing, obviously there's different opinions about how that worked, but it worked out not bad in the end, especially when he retired after the 1 year. And yet it wasn't until finally that they really went, instead of a 3rd or 4th round pick for a guy, actually, paying a heavy price and getting not only a established top NHL defender, but one with a little term left. The guy's actually coming back. And here we have this year now. We're going into the year and we got a top 4 with the left side of Nurse and Ekholm, or Ekholm and Nurse, take your pick. And they'll be playing 45 minutes a night between the two of them, one of them will be out there for 3/4, at minimum 2/3 of every game, and then almost all of the high leverage time. You'll find one or the other of those guys out there, and maybe you'll even find both out there if it's the last minute and a 1-goal lead, right? And um, it's such a change from what they did when Woodcroft first got here, where he loaded up Nurse and Cece with all of the tough minutes, and he tried to basically treat both the Keith Bouchard and the Kulak uh, pairings as third pairings, right? Kulak with Tyson Berry, it was at that time, and he tried to use them both as third pairings, and did so successfully because Nurse and Cece soaked up so many minutes. And that is a very unconventional approach, and you'd rather have two real solid pairs and then cobble together a third pair or even a trio, as they did here, where they've got 5, 6, and 7 are pretty reliable guys. So to me, Ekholm is a big key to where it goes next.
Yeah. Yeah, Dash, your thoughts? I mean, I know you've read the article, Bruce's article. Your thoughts? What excites you the most? Is Ekholm top
I don't know
four?
about what excites me the most. It's just the consolidated piece is ultimately, I think, what's exciting, right? Because it's a season that we're going in and we got a chance, if not one of the best chances in the league, and it's because of all these 9 things that we have that chance.
9 items.
I always.
So my colleague Kurt Levins, he's got the copyright. So we'll call him. I said I wanted to have 8 in the headline, and I kind of blew it because 8 + 1 does.
Well, at first I thought you were using Rashog math when you said 8, and then I saw 9 at the bottom, I'll be honest. But then once I saw you say 8 other things, I did put that together. There's not a time in my life that I haven't read an article from somebody like Bruce McCurdy or Alan Mitchell where I don't learn something. And what I really liked about this one and what stood out for me was the fact that you did the math and mentioned that there's only 3 Oilers on the entire roster that weren't born in the 90s. And why that's important is that puts our entire roster between the ages of 23 and 34, which is right. That's your peak NHL years, or should be, right, Bruce?
Yeah, that's within 3 years either way. It's very different from having a roster where you're talented. I mean, remember the rosters with Hull, Eberle, and Nugent Hopkins and Gagne, where they're supposed to be driving the offense, and they're all like 21 years old, right? And then you have a bunch of 34-year-olds, and you look at the average of the roster, and you think, well, overall, but you got a bunch of guys at this end of the playing spectrum, and then a bunch of guys at this end. Now you got a team where almost all of them are near the center of the career curve. Very different equation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the years of Cogliano, Nielsen, and Gagne running that top line are long gone.
Yeah, and you add in guys like Ekholm, right? Like that just adds to the veteran presence that this team has, right? When I looked at your article, I mean, one of the things that I'm looking at that that I'm pretty excited about is of course, you talk about this real top 4, and Ken Holland talked about it today. He's talking about Bouchard, like, about guys that he expects to come up the ranks. And he talked about Bouchard being patient and getting his time. Of course, Ekholm, is really kind of made a change on that, just as Keith did with Bouchard too. It seems he seems to play a little bit better as a calming presence with a calming vet. But lots has been made of Darnell Nurse and his comments, about being blamed for everything. When you look at the numbers, and you talked about them in your article, like he is outstanding. Like for a guy that's just about done everything for this Oilers team. And I'm still watching NHL.com. Like they don't even rank him in the top 30, I don't think, of defensemen in the league. I'm just shocked by it. I mean, what are we 2 years away from him being 6th or 7th in Norris voting? He's consistently gets puts points on the board. He's put in positions to I think, not be successful because of how often he plays, right? How many minutes he's played. This might be Nurse's year to shine because he's finally being put in a position to be successful. So I'm excited about this defense this year. And it all stems from that Ekholm being here for the whole season piece. But I'm really, really excited to see what Nurse brings when he's being utilized the way I think he should be utilized.
I think Nurse's Achilles heel has always been trying to do too much, has it not?
But he's not been given any choice, really. I mean,
oh no,
Yeah.
I agree. No,
Yeah.
I can't disagree
tough
with that.
on
But
that.
ultimately,
He's
you
been
know,
the
when
one.
you've got a solidified top four now, like Bruce has said in the article, it allows him to take that step back and not have to always be the guy that goes up against the other team's top line. Sometimes Mateus can do that some nights if Eck wants, and well, not or if the coach wants, I should say. And you know, ultimately, he doesn't have to do too much on the power play because Bouchard's still doing that. And right, some of those nights where he's having an off night or he's running around, you can throw him into that second pairing role, and it doesn't hurt you anymore.
Well, imagine if this guy had been playing on another team and the Oilers went out and signed him. And we're talking about
Elation.
people always saying we need to get a number one defenseman on this team, but you can't pick them up elsewhere. You have to develop their own. And the Oilers went out and drafted this guy, number 7. He went back to juniors for 2 years. He came in and he played about 5 games in the AHL, and he poured on into the NHL. He kicked the crap out of his ELC for value. He kicked the crap out of his first extension
And bridge number 2.
extension. He was easily value plus on the second extension, and now the bill has come due, and now there's a whole lot of people really sour about it, and I just don't fully get it. Like, what is your definition of a number one defenseman? To me, if you're in the top 32 in the league in a bunch of different categories, that sounds like a top defenseman. If you're in the top 16 of the league, you're in the top half of that number one defenseman group. And Bruce was top 16 over the last 3 years in ice time, even strength goals and points, shots on goals, penalty minutes, giveaways, hits, blocked shots, and plus. I mean, that's right across the statistical spectrum.
And how many of those guys in the 15 above him, Bruce, have really great line pair defensemen? Right. Yeah. Like that's like people seem to forget that. Like, you know,
we didn't have to carry Cody Ceci and Broberg and Bouchard for years, right? Like, I think that's a huge part of it. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's 32 even strength goals. He's third in the league over 3 years.
How many of the
Eric Carlson ahead of him? Third. 3 goals behind the 2 of them. They're tied. Like,
Tad, to Michael's question, how many of the 15 above him could drop the mitts and break your nose?
Well, yeah, there's not 50. He's in the top 16. Sometimes he's 16. Sometimes he's third or first. Or you know,
right. Yeah.
He's way up.
I'm just saying, I'm not going into the corner intimidated by Cole Makar or Heiskanen or you know what I mean.
He munches the big minutes, and he consistently makes things happen while they're out there. They're not all good. I mean, there's a difference between being big minute muncher and being perfect, and there's not too many of the latter. You know, not too many Nick Lidstroms out there that never make mistakes. He makes mistakes, and he makes a ton of mistakes, and some of them are pretty egregious. And some of the things he brings, and if you look at like the whole package of what this guy brings to the Oilers, he has his teammates' backs at all times. Last year there were 2 times where someone took a run at McDavid, and Nurse just took care of that guy right away because he was out there on the ice for starters, because he wasn't Steve McIntyre sitting on the end of the bench for 57 minutes. He's playing 24 minutes a night, so it's a good chance that when something happens, he's going to be available to deal with it, and the teammates love it. And you know, that to me, that's, I got enough 20th century in me to think that still has a whole lot of value.
For sure.
Team toughness is a huge part of it, and a big part of team toughness is having your teammates' backs. And sometimes it's the Nuge that, remember, he went to bat for the guy who hit Yamamoto there, and Nuge, the Toronto guy there, Nuge laid a bit of a trimming on him, but oftentimes it's Darnell, and he's not a guy to mess around with. And that's just one aspect that he brings. Can he
Let me ask you 3 quick questions, Bruce.
Do I think he'll be better? Yes, because Ekholm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you 3 quick questions, Bruce. How many Norris trophies did Nick Lidstrom win?
Oh boy, 6 or 7? Was it 7?
How many did he win above the age of 30?
Oh, you're gonna have to fill me in there. Like he was
5 or
ageless,
6 of
right?
them, second
Yeah,
down. How old is Darnell Nurse?
yeah. No, he's still just 28 years of age, and I'm confident that his second year on this contract's going to be better than his first.
Yep.
And I'm confident. I mean, this is a guy that gives, he lives for the Oilers, but he's, does other things in his life. He's a great citizen in our community. Doesn't get much credit for that. And boy, there's just a whole lot of people. You read any comment section, and just out of nowhere, well, let's rip Nurse and his contract, you know. And so, well, maybe he's only worth 7. Okay, why rip the guy? I
Yeah.
mean, the contract is the contract. Some are a little higher than you'd like. Some are a little. I mean, Nuge's contract at $5 million. That was a great deal. So it's just a matter of the timing and when they were signed and what kind of season the guy had the year before.
Dreisaitl's contract.
Yeah,
Maybe the best one in the league, right?
The same guy that was upset with Horkoff 10 years ago, right? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is people have a long memory, it seems, when Nurse makes a mistake. There were a couple games last season where I was particularly mad at him for a few different things that he did, and I chalk that up to, a guy that's playing, close to half the game is going to make noticeable mistakes, and you got to kind of forget about it and look at the whole picture. And those mistakes actually decreased as, he got less playing time because, as you said, Dash, he's trying to do everything. And why wouldn't you if you're that guy that has to do everything? He was kind of the bright spot on the Oilers D for quite a while. And so, he was just the guy that like the biggest nail always gets hit, right? Like that's just where it is for him. And so happy that he's maybe got a chance to be insulated this year. Like to talk about one last thing before we end our night. We got about 14 minutes left. Our guy Lotzi has put an article together. You can go to heavyhockey.com, check out realistic expectations for Holloway based on NCAA draft comparables. And for those listening in, Lotzi is Ryan Lotsberg. He writes for heavyhockey.com, one of our writers there. He put it together. And I don't know, Bruce, if you've had a chance to read Lotsberg's article, but he put together a pretty good article about what we can expect from Lotsberg this season. Listening again to
From whom,
to
sorry?
Holland today, he was talking about these guys, and he kind of gave Holloway a pass because Stauffer said, is this like they got to make it kind of year for guys like Holloway and Broberg, and Holland said, no, like, let's give this guy a little bit of a break. He had a tough season last year. He got injured. He's played, 51 games in the league. He's had a tough go. And so it's not a make it or break it year, but it's certainly more to be expected of him. Lotsberg did bring up, utilization. I think it's tough for a guy of Holloway's ilk, if you will, to come in and maybe get that 45 or 50 points when he's going to get very little time on the league's best power play, right? He's going to, he could benefit if, say Connor Brown doesn't do very well, but thoughts, maybe Dash, I started with you last time, Bruce. Dash, your thoughts on Holloway and what to expect and where you see him going this year.
I think you said a couple key words there. And the power play is a big part of it. Utilization's the other part of it. When I read Lotzi's article, I think the thing that jumped out for me is, and even looking at that prediction, I love Lotzi, but I do think that's pretty high. I don't see him getting into those high 30s and getting, a half a point a game type of player. And it's about that utilization. There's no chance that he's going to get any power play time unless it's getting thrown over the boards with the second unit, in a 4-1 game in the third period. He'll get a few minutes here and there with, those situations where I mentioned earlier where maybe Nuge and Hyman have just killed a penalty, so you can throw him out there with Draisaitl for a shift. But that's really going to be his offensive flashes unless he can solidify himself a spot in the top 6. Lotzie said top 9. I think that's got to be top 6. McLeod and Fogle aren't driving offensive forces that you're going to get some sort of, benefit from being on their wing. I think that happens when you're in that top 6 and playing with one of those fantastic players. And, when I read that, I thought that maybe something he missed in there that he could have added was the fact that, I think Boldy has played in his comparisons for the record, if you're listening, where, Matt Boldy and Cole Caulfield and these guys that have come through the NCAA in the same way, and how they all played through the NCAA and now how they're flourishing in the NHL. And the big part is again, utilization. 99 career points for Boldy and 36 of them are on the power play, right?
Yeah.
You've got 79 career points for Cole Caulfield and 23 of them are on the power play. So I think that that's going to be a tough itch to scratch for Dylan Holloway, at least for the next few years.
Yeah, we love to boast about the Oilers' great, unprecedented first power play unit, but we rarely mention that we also feature the league's worst second unit. Between them, among them, scored exactly
I just learned that now.
0 goals last year. 0 goals from the second unit. A couple of assists were in there.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl 32, McDavid 21, Nugent Hopkins 15, Hyman 15, Barry 4 before the trade, and Bouchard 2 after the trade. And there's your 89 power play goals for the season. All of them from the first unit. It's unbelievable.
Wow. I remember Cassian getting one 2 years ago in the second power play unit, just as the clock was ticking 2 minutes.
Now they play about 82% of the minutes, the first unit, to be fair, but they got 100% of the goals.
Yeah. Is it statistically the worst? Did they not get any points last year?
0 goals.
A couple of points, but 0 goals is my
0
point.
goals.
It's pretty hard to be any worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty hard.
So, but the first unit, why bench him? Put him out there for a minute and a half. Chances are they're coming to the bench celebrating a goal as opposed to changing out for the second unit, right? So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and
just
it's hard
to what I said earlier too. Like I heard earlier today that I think it was Stauffer actually that may have said it. There was of the 50 some rookies in the NHL last year that had X number of games played. There was only 2 out of the 50 some that had less than 10 minutes a night in average ice time, and Dylan Holloway was second last in the entire NHL in that. And right, it just tells you that if you've got somebody of that caliber on your roster and you're not utilizing them, then they shouldn't be there. And, and that's kind of lends to the point I said earlier in the night, is that I think if he can't land that top spot earlier, I think he's just better off in the bake.
That discussion went on all year. It was weird. Like right before camp, they said we either want him playing in the top 9 or else we want him playing in Bakersfield. And then he wound up in the 4th line. He stayed there, and it was forever. And only when they ran into like a true cap crunch that they finally sent him down to Baco. And then of course he got hurt the first game there, and that was that. But he was kind of like a fish out of water. And the encouragement I take from Dylan Holloway's statistical record, so everywhere he went, he was sort of pretty good in the first year, and the second year he crushed it. And he really took a huge jump his second year in the AJHL, and he did similar in college, where he went from 0.5 points per game to 1.5 in his sophomore year. Just took it to another level entirely, and hopefully with the experience that he's gained in the NHL, he'll be able to take a good hard skating start at it this year.
He won't have a worse start than he had in his first shift last year.
Giveaway, eh?
Cough the puck up for a
And
the other way.
And
that's got to affect the guys. It's got to affect the guy's season, right? Like,
it's the coach's trust too, right, Michael?
Yeah, 100%. And look, I look at Holloway. I see a guy that needs a little bit of time. I think playing with Fogle and McLeod, if that's in fact where he's slotted, that's the perfect spot for him. And once in a while, Fogle just seems like he's the second coming of Connor McDavid, and maybe maybe that's where Holloway gets some points from in those fits and spurts. And when Fogel's on, I mean, he skates really well. He moves the puck really well. He's just so streaky. But he can be fun to watch, and I'm a big fan of McLeod, and these guys, they've got some time, this extra time, I think, with the captain skate, this extra 2 weeks, that's going to account for a lot for these guys, I think.
That's what caused my optimism to write that whole article. And I'm not generally all entirely 100% optimistic, but today I'm feeling really good about this team. They all came together to do this. And there's lots of reasons to be. Before we get down into the nitty gritty about the 12th forward and the 7th defenseman and the second power play, we got some mighty abundance of riches here with, the superstars at the top end of the roster. But there's a lot of good things there. And the sad story is, writing a story like this draws no reaction. There were no comments on my post. I got no replies to my Twitter motion. I couldn't even start a discussion about Darnell Nurse when I was singing his praises a little bit about his numbers. But if you write any kind of a negative article or leave any open question, boy, oh boy, it's just, so it's kind of discouraging in a way. I prefer to be optimistic about my team. There's lots of reasons to be optimistic about this team. We should be enjoying this. We should be enjoying it together.
Agreed. So after you're done subscribing to the YouTube channel, make sure you go and give Bruce McCurdy's article a comment. Tell him whether you like it or you hate it. I mean, Bruce is feeling a little lonely tonight. He's been without internet for a full day.
Get a little heavy hockey bump on that article. Let's go.
Someone's gonna like this, surely. Couldn't tell.
There's lots of reasons to be optimistic. I think guys like Holloway, Bouchard. We haven't mentioned Broberg tonight. He's. Who knows? Like, it's just so hard. But I started to think about this again. I go back to this Holland interview with Stauffer, which I've been talking about all night. So if you get a chance, go to Oilers Now and listen to that in their podcast. It's good. And Holland had a lot of the same talk tracks he always has. But he did bring out Bouchard waiting and being patient. Of course, we all remember Bouchard spent all of his time in the press box, and every fan, in fact, including myself, thought that was a huge mistake. Yep. Well, it doesn't seem to be a mistake now. I mean, Bouchard seems to be coming along reasonably well, and he, found the time. Whether Holland was alluding to that or not, but that might be Broberg's place this year, right? He might be in Bouchard's position. Well, he was in Bouchard's position last year, but he might be spending more time like that again this year. And it'll be up to him to change that, right? Whether he comes in and takes a spot from somebody else. But we haven't really talked much about him. We've got only a couple minutes left. Maybe just quick thoughts on Broberg. Is he going to make the move this year?
Well, one of my biggest concerns with Ken Holland's method of building the team is how much term is on the contracts. If you look specifically, I wrote about this maybe a month ago, Philip Broberg's situation. Holland's tried and true record is put a couple of old guys in front of the young guys, force them to beat out the old guy, give the old guy some games, the young guy more games in the minors, and then eventually, turn it over. But with Broberg, he wound up kind of being the odd man out after that trade for the that made him the fourth left defenseman, and there he sits because Darnell Nurse has got 7 more years. Matthias Ekholm's got 3 more years. Brett Kulak has 3 more years. Now, why they think they had to sign that guy to 4 years when they got a young guy up and coming, this is my issue with Holland's cap management. It's not so much the AAV as the term, and it's stacked up on so many contracts that there's not much flexibility. And when you do have a guy like a Bouchard or McLeod that hits it out of the park, and you're locked into all these other contracts, how the hell do you get everybody signed? You wind up giving guys away like they had to do last summer.
And Bruce, we're probably going to have to keep that as the final thought of the night. We're on the clock now. We can't just keep going all night. And I'd certainly love to. I could talk hours of hockey with you. Dash, any last minutes? We got 30 seconds left before they shut us down. Like, turn off the lights. We can keep going on YouTube for a couple seconds, but if not, I'd just like to say thank you for tuning in. Make sure you go to youtube.ca/heavyhockey and give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you again next week. Make sure you check out Fantasy Hockey Hacks tomorrow. They've got Jason Chen on. It's going to be an exciting one. That starts at 9 p.m. Mountain. It's part of the Heavy Hockey at Night. Everybody have a great night. We are out of here.
Go Oilers.